You've described loneliness as painful before, as an ache, as something that sits in your chest. Every doctor you've ever seen would have told you that's just a metaphor. In 2003, a brain scanner proved it wasn't. The experiment was almost comically simple. A neuroscientist named Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA recruited volunteers to lie inside an fMRI scanner and play a computer game called Cyberball. The game was straightforward, 3 players passing a ball back and forth. What the volunteers didn't know was that the other 2 players weren't real. They were controlled by a computer program. And at a certain point in every game, those 2 players simply stopped passing the ball to the volunteer inside the scanner. They kept playing between themselves. The volunteer was left out. That was the entire experiment. A computer game, a ball that stopped coming, and a brain scanner watching what happened next. What happened next was this. The moment the volunteer was excluded, a specific region of their brain lit up on the scanner. The anterior cingulate cortex, a small, curved structure deep in the brain, sitting roughly above and behind the eyes. It's part of what neuroscientists call the pain matrix. The anterior cingulate cortex is activated when you stub your toe, when you burn your hand, when something hits you hard enough to register as damage. It's one of the core structures the brain uses to process physical pain. It lit up because someone stopped passing a ball in a computer game. Eisenberger published the results in Science in 2003. She called the phenomenon social pain. The brain, she argued, doesn't draw the line between physical and social pain the way medicine had always assumed. The same circuitry that tells you your body is being damaged also tells you you've been excluded from the group. The overlap isn't metaphorical, it's anatomical. The implications of that finding were stranger than anyone expected. If social pain uses the same neural architecture as physical pain, then the 2 systems should be able to interfere with each other. And they do. In 2010, a psychologist named C. Nathan DeWall at the University of Kentucky ran a study that has become one of the more quietly disturbing findings in social neuroscience. He gave one group of volunteers acetaminophen, the active ingredient in Tylenol, every day for 3 weeks. He gave another group a placebo. At the end of the study, he asked both groups to report their daily levels of social pain, feelings of rejection, exclusion, and loneliness. The group taking the painkiller reported significantly less social pain than the placebo group. Tylenol, a drug designed to reduce physical pain, had reduced loneliness. Not by making people less lonely in their circumstances, by reducing the neural signal that registered the pain of being lonely. That finding didn't prove loneliness is identical to physical pain. The systems overlap, but they aren't the same. What it proved is that they share enough architecture that a drug targeting one can dampen the other. Your brain processes social rejection through pain circuitry, not as a metaphor for pain, through the actual circuitry. The evolutionary argument for why this had to be the case was made most clearly by the neuroscientist John Cacioppo, who spent 30 years studying loneliness before his death in 2018. Cacioppo's argument was this: for most of human evolutionary history, being separated from the group wasn't an inconvenience, it was a death sentence. A lone human on the African savanna, without fire, without tools they couldn't carry alone, without the collective vigilance of a group watching for predators, that human was going to die, probably quickly. The brain needed a system that made social separation feel urgent enough to act on, and the most powerful urgency signal the brain already had was pain, so it borrowed the architecture. Social exclusion was routed through the pain system, because pain is the thing that makes you stop what you're doing and fix the problem immediately. Loneliness isn't a side effect of being human, it's a survival signal. It's your brain telling you that something dangerous is happening and you need to reconnect with the group before it gets worse. But Cacioppo's most unsettling finding wasn't about the pain itself. It was about what chronic loneliness does to the brain that's carrying it. He found that lonely people don't just feel more pain, they perceive the world differently. Their brains, running the survival signal at a constant low level, begin to scan the environment for threats with a hypervigilance that isn't conscious and isn't chosen. Lonely people pick out hostile faces faster in a crowd. They interpret ambiguous social signals as rejection more often. They remember negative social interactions with more clarity and more emotional weight than positive ones. The signal that was supposed to make you reconnect with the group doesn't just hurt. Over time, it begins to reshape the way you read other people, making the group harder to re-enter the longer you've been outside it. Loneliness, left unresolved, makes itself harder to resolve. It is, in Cacioppo's phrase, self-perpetuating. The problem is what happens when you can't. Cacioppo spent decades documenting what chronic loneliness does to the body when the signal fires and nothing changes. The findings are not mild. Lonely people show elevated cortisol levels, the primary stress hormone. Their immune systems function differently, producing higher levels of inflammatory markers. Their sleep is more fragmented even when they get the same number of hours. Their cardiovascular systems show increased vascular resistance. Cacioppo's meta-analysis of existing research, published in 2015, found that chronic loneliness increased the risk of early death by roughly 26%. Comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, not feeling sad about being alone, dying sooner because of it. The signal that was supposed to make you reconnect with the group, when it runs chronically without resolution, begins to damage the body that's carrying it. What makes this more than a biological curiosity is the scale. In 2018, the United Kingdom appointed the world's first minister for loneliness, citing research suggesting that over 9 million people in the country often or always felt lonely. In 2023, the United States Surgeon General issued a formal advisory declaring loneliness a public health epidemic, estimating that roughly half of American adults reported measurable levels of loneliness. A study tracking how Americans spend their time found that the average person spent significantly more time alone in 2021 than in 2003. The hours previously filled with incidental human contact, the commute, the shared lunch, the colleague you didn't particularly like but sat near every day, have been contracting steadily for decades. The casual daily contact that used to come free with the structure of ordinary life, the kind that doesn't require planning or effort or sending a message to arrange, has been quietly disappearing, and the brain that evolves to treat its absence as an emergency is running the alarm signal in more people, more often, with less resolution than at any point in recorded history. Eisenberger's volunteer lying in the scanner at UCLA in 2003 was excluded from a computer game by a program that didn't know they existed. The anterior cingulate cortex fired anyway. The pain was real, and somewhere in that small, almost absurd experiment, a ball, a scanner, 2 fake players, was the beginning of a scientific case that what we had been calling an emotional problem was a physical one all along. You've described loneliness as an ache before, as something that sits in your chest. Every doctor you've ever seen would have told you that's just a metaphor. They were looking in the wrong place.